Now, we're doing the Northwest Division of the association, and that is the Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves, Oklahoma City Thunder, Portland Trailblazers, and Utah Jazz. So I figure I'll start off with an easy one here. I'll go with the Utah Jazz. Now, Utah Jazz have been to 2 NBA Finals. Of course, they fell short because they had to play Michael Jordan. Most people did fall short back in those days. But, rich history. You've got, your John Stocktons, your Mark Eatons, players like that. I don't want to disrespect.
Sad to lose Mark Eaton. Very sad story that came out recently.
Right.
He was such a beloved figure in that community.
Yeah. And it was a bike accident, if I'm not mistaken.
Very sad.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with Sean Bradley.
Yeah.
Tragic.
Special soul.
Ultimately, the greatest Utah Jazz player of all time is the mailman, Karl Malone. I mean, that guy, at the time of his retirement, second leading scorer in the NBA. The thing back in those days, Chris and Ben, is when we were growing up in those 90s, we didn't really get a lot of West Coast TV. So you're really watching Karl Malone and Stockton through the USA Today sports page. And you're seeing this guy, Karl Malone's averaging 27 and 14 every game. And Stockton's got 18 assists. But we never really saw them growing up. But that they were great. And Karl Malone, arguably, you put him in the greatest power forward of all time category. So I think that was a fairly simple.
Incredible to score that many points, too, without really having a three-pointer in your bag, right? The dude was just a bucket and was so strong. When you hear other forwards of that era talk about competing against him, guys like Barkley and stuff, they just talk about his strength.
Well, it seemed like, to me, he was the first guy who kind of was known and really kind of glorified his own workout routine. Nobody lifted weights or that we knew of or was so outwardly open about it. This dude was jacked. He could have played defensive end.
It's really wild driving around the state of Utah. If you ever find yourself in Provo or Salt Lake, they're just Karl Malone car dealerships everywhere.
Really?
Yeah. Everywhere.
Karl Malone.
Didn't he used to drive an 18-wheeler around famously?
And actually would transport goods, I think. He was a trucker.
That is true. Yeah. And also shout out Karl Malone for joining up with Hulk Hogan to take on joining up with DDP to take on Hulk Hogan, Dennis Rodman, and the NWO back in the
also
World
one of my
Championship
least favorite
days.
players of all time, but I digress.
There was something about Karl Malone, as great as he was just he didn't really resonate.
There's a few things about Karl Malone I don't really like.
Yes, absolutely. Ben, look, you already got Denver Nuggets fans mad at you.
Nuggets. We got the Nuggets next.
Let's
get to the greatest Nugget of all time.
We don't need to get into the Karl Malone situation. I'm going to save the Nuggets. I'm going to go into the
okay, save the Nuggets.
We're going to save the Nuggets. We're going to go into another Northwest team, and that's the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers went to a couple finals in the 90s, but again, they were in that era where Michael Jordan lived. So it's really hard to eat.
And Isaiah Thomas.
But, the Trailblazers, they are former NBA champions. Of course, they beat Dr. J and the Sixers in the 70s. And rich history. I think they may have had the longest consecutive home sellout streak in the history.
Back when it was the Rose Garden.
Yeah, in the NBA. Great franchise. You got guys like Bill Walton, of course, who led them to the championship. You've got Terry Porter.
Oh, love Terry Porter.
Marcus Aldridge.
The late Jerome Kersey.
Jeff Petrie.
Think about the great international players who touched that floor. Guys like Drazen and Arvydas Sabonis.
Who I was really going to get into, and I'm glad you said that, because that was my next sentence. It was just can you imagine if we would have got 1986 Arvydas Sabonis fresh off of they dismantled
or
the USA.
Or if they let Drazen eat.
Yeah,
or
just
Sam Bowie didn't get hurt.
That's the other big what if. What if Sam Bowie never got injured? But great history with the Trailblazers, but I'm going with the guy who was really looked at as the number 2 player for many years behind Michael Jordan in the league. That's Clyde the Glide Drexler.
Clyde.
Yeah, Clyde the Glide Drexler. The availability, too. Something we talk about with basketball all week long. I'm pulling up his stats right now. Every year, 82 games, 80 games, 82 games. The guy played. And that's a big deal back then.
Yeah, and like I said, for Clyde, he was really looked at as Michael Jordan was 1, Clyde Drexler was 2. And although I don't think that Michael really appreciated being, and Chris, you can comment on this because you watched The Last Dance. I don't think he really appreciated Clyde being compared compared to him, and he really took it out on him in Dream Team practices, from what I understand. You know?
Yeah, he was really upset that other people existed on Earth, it sounds like.
Just the fact that anyone would have the audacity to be compared to him.
Try to also play basketball?
Yeah, like I don't think Mike liked that.
Like, I'm the only one allowed to play the shooting guard. Sorry.
All right, so now let's go up to the Minnesota Timberwolves, okay? Now, first and foremost, for the Timberwolves, I'm giving a shout out, as I've been doing, to Altoona's own Doug West, okay? Doug West was a legend in Altoona, played for the Timberwolves for many years. Not the greatest Timberwolf ever, but he's certainly the greatest Altoona mountain lion to play in the National Basketball Association, with all due respect to Johnny Moore, Mike Isolino, and Danny Fortson. So I'm just giving Dougie West a shout out. But Timberwolves come out, you're talking to Timberwolves, it's Kevin Garnett, really, the big ticket, the kid. I remember I wrote a column in my college newspaper when he was about to enter the draft, and I was like, it might be a mistake to draft this kid out of high school. I just want to look into the camera right now and say, KG, I apologize. I was so wrong. I was wrong, baby.
Is that your worst take ever?
That probably, yeah, I would say I don't make many bad takes. So, yeah, that would be pretty bad. Saying that Kevin Garnett might not be that great. But
one of my favorite players to never play for the Knicks. One of my favorite all-time guys.
Just love KG, the intensity. Like, he was that dude, man. And I'm so glad he ended up getting a ring. Now let's go to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I'm going to try to speed through this because I know we got some time issues. Basically, guys, what I did here, and we can talk later about this, I broke it up. I want to give the Seattle SuperSonics their props. So I'm going to say the greatest Seattle SuperSonic of all time, Gary the Glove Payton. I realize they are former NBA champions, but to me, when I growing up, this guy personified the SuperSonics. I know they've got a huge fan base, very upset they don't have a team. I kind of hope that gets rectified at some point soon, but I wanted to give this Seattle franchise love because we're all big basketball fans.
Hey, Brockman, what happens if Gary Payton guards Steph Curry in the NBA Finals?
He gets absolutely worked.
No way.
Wow.
Who gets worked, Steph?
No, GP gets worked.
Challenge flag on the field there. I don't know. I take the glove locking anybody up.
Yeah,
I'm a big Gary
you
Payton
remember
fan.
Gary Payton held Michael Jordan statistically to his worst finals performance ever.
Big Gary Payton fan.
Yeah.
Shouts out to GP. Good
and then we're
dude,
going to
too.
flip on to the Oklahoma City Thunder, again, making this quick. It came down essentially, when we're speaking just Thunder, Russell and KD.
Whoa, Nick Collison? No?
Shout out to Nick Collison for his longevity.
Come on,
with
if
the
I'm
franchise.
changing planes in Oklahoma, I might be able to tell someone I'm related to Nick Collison.
That's
no?
a good point. You do look like his little
Got a
brother.
Nick Collison-esque thing going on.
I went with the MVP. I went with Kevin Durant. Much like LeBron James, if Kevin Durant spent any time on your team, then he's in the running for your greatest player in your franchise. And it came down between he and Russ. I just went with KD. I thought that was the right move, the right
KD
choice.
is the best basketball player for every team he's on, every floor he touches. That is his legacy. It is being the best.
All right, now
despite those T-shirt jerseys being the worst.
Yeah,
for our
God,
radio
no, I don't know.
audience, we
Awful.
showed a photo of KD wearing one of those
What a terrible era.
1970s
You guys remember
softball
those?
T-shirt
Yeah.
jersey things. Hope everybody's fired for that one.
All right, so now we're going to finish this up with the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, the Nuggets.
The Nuggets,
Nuggets Nation.
I will say this: the Denver Nuggets have one of my favorite uniforms of all time in any sport. Those 80s kind of Horizon type Denver Nuggets jerseys. A lot of great players, from Dan Issel to Fat Lever. But we're going to talk about the greatest player ever, and I basically boiled this down to three people: Carmelo, the Joker,
Carmelo Anthony.
and I had to eliminate Carmelo, great Nugget, but maybe not the greatest Nugget of all time. Then it came down to Joker, two-time MVP, and again, 10 years from now, we're going to be saying that Joker is the greatest Denver Nugget of all time. But we're old school around here. We like to show love and respect to the old school. So because of that, I went with Alex English.
Yeah, that's right. Alex English.
Best Denver Nugget of all time. I think 14 team stats. He's the all-time leader in points, assists, games played, minutes played, field goals. Alex English was a walking bucket. If I'm not mistaken, he led the decade of the 80s in points scored. I could be wrong about that. That just popped into my head just now.
How was
but
he left off the top 75? He's the greatest Nugget of all time. He made the All-Star team like 8 times. They were in the playoffs 10 of his 11 years there. Went to a Western Conference Finals, dropped 50 twice. Yeah, dropping 2,000 points back-to-back years. Alex English is the greatest Denver Nugget of all time.
Yeah, and that's just my GOAT list for that division, man. And as always, interested to see how wrong I was when I checked the comments on YouTube later on.
Good stuff.